Welcome to Dynamics of Ecosystems. Today is day 1, Intro to Ecology. So to start, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a community of living organisms in conjunction with the non-living components of their environment interacting as a system. These biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. So as you can see from this little diagram over here, we have an example. So there is a plant community. So all of the plants here make up the community. And then zoom out a little bit, and then there is the habitat, which includes the other living species and their interactions and relationships. And then beyond that, we also have the ecosystem, which also includes external abiotic factors like the sun and disturbances and moisture and things like that. So abiotic factors in an environment, these are the non-living things that influence an ecosystem. So soil, light, water, minerals, pH, salinity, humidity, and temperature. So the biotic factors in an environment are the living things within an ecosystem. So that includes plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, protists, and archaea. And there's a lovely monstera plant right there. So what is the difference between a population and a community? So a population is the total of one species living in an area. So this population of penguins here includes just the penguins. While a community is a combination of all species coexisting in an ecosystem. So a coral reef is a great example. You can see there are some aquatic plants and some various corals, looks like some sponges, as well as this starfish and all of these different species of fish that are swimming around. Combined, create the community. So producers and consumers. So a producer is an organism that creates its own food. So plants. There are some other examples, but primarily plants. Consumers are organisms that cannot produce their own food and must utilize others to survive. So we're consumers, bugs, other species of animals, and also decomposers like fungi. They can't produce their own food. They must decompose other species in order to get nutrients. So moving on to trophic levels, we have primary producers, plants, primary consumers, which are the smallest animals in an ecosystem or just those that eat plants, so herbivores. Moving up, we have secondary consumers, which would be the animals that consume the herbivores. And then finally, we have tertiary consumers, which are the animals that consume the other consumers. In each trophic level, only 10% of energy is transmitted up to the next level. So I think we learned in another unit about energy loss through heat and different things. So think about this little grasshopper here would have to eat a lot of plants in order to have enough energy to survive. And that's only powering one grasshopper. And then meanwhile, you have this little field mouse here who would have to eat a lot of grasshoppers in order to survive and reproduce. And then that in tenfold represents the amount of plants that were needed to create the energy to power the mouse. So adaptations. So this is just a bit of a review. It might help you with your species research poster. But an adaptation is an inherited characteristic used to increase a species' ability to survive and reproduce. So here we have a polar bear, And as you can see, its fur appears nice and white. Fun fact, it's actually clear, but it just appears white. But anyways, so its fur and its nice white fur help it camouflage into its environment, which makes it more difficult for prey to see the polar bear. So you can kind of think that if there was a brown polar bear, if one polar bear just happened to be born brown, that particular polar bear likely wouldn't have a good chance of surviving and reproducing. So its offspring of brown polar bear likely isn't going to survive. Meanwhile, the white bears are better suited for their habitat. Those bears are the ones that are going to reproduce, and then those characteristics get passed along. So another good example is this cute little fennec fox. So it's a desert species. You can see it has these big ears and they're pretty cute. So these ears are adaptations and they help the fox twofold. They help it hear, which obviously helps it stay away from predators, but also in the desert heat, they also act like radiators. So there's heat coming out of these ears, and it helps it regulate its body temperature, which is pretty neat. So just another thing to help you with your species research poster, just a little bit about value. So there are two types of value that we're going to talk about that you can include in your poster. There's economic value of a species, which means that the species can generate some sort of monetary gain for humans. So that could be a species that we grow and harvest for agricultural purposes for food. It could be a species that generates income in the tourism industry. So that could be like, I don't know, safaris that go and look at elephants or something like that. Or a species that is used for hunting and fishing on a more commercial level. That also includes livestock and things like that. And then on the other side, we have species that have cultural value. So cultural value is a value to a specific group of people for ceremonial, medicinal, or spiritual reasons, or it could also be a traditional food. So here we have an example of sweetgrass for cultural value, which is important to a lot of indigenous groups in North America for different purposes. And then on the economic side, we have potatoes, because we can grow and sell potatoes for economic value or for economic purposes. So today was more of just a little bit of a review. Please go over the outlines for the 2 projects for science, and please also answer and submit these questions. So these will also be posted on Edsby, or you can just have a look now and go back in the video and try to answer the questions, and then submit your answers to me. All right, thank you, grade 10s. Bye.